When the Star League Defense Force went on a self-imposed exile into the deep Periphery on November 5, 2784, it kicked off the series of conflicts known as the Succession Wars. Each of the former member states of the Star League fought for control of the vacant throne on Terra, hoping to claim dominion over all of their rivals. This struggle for power led to the most terrible loss of life in history, tens of billions of dead, and many more wounded. By 2821, the successor states reached a stalemate, having achieved precious little, forcing them to conclude hostilities. ComStar, the Terran-based organization who provided interstellar communications for each of the great houses, had become radicalized by the abhorrent death toll. Their leadership believed that a continued technological decline brought on by war without end would eventually lead to such atrocities being beyond the capability of mankind. Thus, they secretly incited violence between the successor states at every turn. A period of rapid rearmament had followed the first peace, and before the decade was out, they were at each other's throats again. Some tried to avoid getting dragged into it, but by 2830, ComStar had manipulated all of them into resuming the conflict. When the belligerent realms again ran out of steam in 2863 and were unable to reach an accord, a third succession war began to look like an inevitability. In the 80 years since the post-Star League era began, the people of the Inner Sphere had known less than a decade of peace. There was almost no one left alive who could still remember humanity's golden age a century prior. Many had forgotten why the wars had even begun, with the new successor lords barely paying lip service to their ancestors' claim to the position of First Lord of the Star League, an institution which now clearly no longer existed. If there were any winners to come out of the succession wars up to this point, perhaps the sole candidate was the Draconis Combine. They were the only nation to have expanded their territory at the expense of both of their neighbours and not had their gains offset by greater losses at home. In 2864, the Combine was led by Coordinator Miyogi Kurita, but he was far from the only major player within the realm. His older sister Rowena had spent the past 2 decades increasing her own power. Her involvement with the People's Reconstruction effort gave the PRE coordinator tremendous support among the common people, who viewed her as a grandmotherly figure in their lives. Rowena's brief spell as regent during the upheaval on Tishomingo likewise won her friends among the nobility. Most significantly, her close ties to the Internal Security Force through her relationship with Director Malcolm Katsuyori made the elder Kuritan all but untouchable. Their third sibling, former coordinator Yuguchi Kurita, had been on good terms with both until his decision to skip over Rowena in the line of succession when nominating an heir shortly before his death. Rowena had played nice so as to not disrupt the Combine's war effort, but now the gloves would come off. She began to use her influence to undermine Miyogi's support among the ISF. His brother's decision to place the intelligence agency under the control of the military during his reign, and his own failure to reverse this act, had already laid the groundwork for a breakdown in their relationship with the coordinator. Rowena's growing authority at court, and the massive private fortune she had amassed, did not go unnoticed by Miyogi. His suspicion that she had failed to notify the Internal Security Force about the foreign agent within Yuguchi's entourage, or that Katsuyori had failed to stop the assassin at her request, led the younger brother to launch an investigation into their activities. Not every member of the intelligence agency was under Rowena's sway. In recent months, ISF agent Rajiv Sulavani had slain another of his compatriots for daring to express dissatisfaction with the coordinator. He was personally appointed by Miyogi to lead a secret task force to conduct this operation. The scale of Rowena's subterfuge and the desperation of their situation soon became apparent, which led Sulavani and his team to start killing. What started as a series of isolated incidents soon escalated to a full-on shadow war between the two factions. By 2865, over 1,000 agents had been eliminated, many on the most spurious evidence. The Draconis Combine mustered soldiery did their best to avoid getting dragged into this quagmire, and instead tried to focus on rebuilding. But once Rowena realized that a direct confrontation between herself and her brother was inevitable, she began maneuvering to win their support. She seized control of the DCMS procurement department by merging it into the PRE, which made the military partially beholden to her if they wished to continue receiving supplies. At this point, other factions began to involve themselves. The neighbouring Federated Sons and Lyran Commonwealth took the chance to embed their own operatives deeper into the fragmenting ISF. The former even managed to turn one of the high-ranking Dark Assassins into becoming an informant for the Ministry of Information, Intelligence and Operations. Within the Federated Sons, First Prince Michael Davion was urged by two of his children, Carl and Melissa, to take advantage of the situation by launching an attack on the Draconis Combine, but their father would not give his consent. The Peace Prince had never been popular among the armed forces of the Federated Sons. Political schemers began contemplating a coup to place Carl in his seat. However, Prime Marshal Peter Davion soon learned of their plans and shot down the insurrection before it could take place. He believed that there was a high probability that when the war resumed, the Lyrans would be targeted first. They could better exploit Kurita's weakness by waiting for their military to become engaged elsewhere. ComStar, meanwhile, sensed an opportunity to further their own goals. The organization at this time was led by Primus Raymond Karpov, the man behind Operation Holy Shroud, the insidious plan to use their own intelligence agency, ROM, to destroy any advanced research being undertaken by the successor states in an effort to exacerbate the widespread technological decline. Reports indicated that if the current peace held, the Inner Sphere might recover this lost technology within 30 years, and so like his predecessor before him, Karpov gave the order to orchestrate events so that a resumption of hostilities was guaranteed. Word of the foreign agents in their midst was leaked to the mustered soldiery, forcing them to get involved in the Shadow War. Among the senior military officers, Taisho Carson Santander, who had nearly led the DCMS to victory in the 7th Battle of Hesperus before his Draconis Combine Admiralty counterpart was defeated in orbit, held a tremendous amount of influence. His position was that they should side with the more powerful Rowena, but there was not unanimous support among them for turning against the Coordinator. At this crucial juncture, the two warring Kuritans were approached by the aide to Taisho Rei Yoshida, their nephew Taragi. He promised to be able to speak on their behalf to the warlords, swaying them to their side in exchange for advancement. While Miyogi gave lukewarm support, Rowena instead spurned his offer, a decision that would ultimately collapse her house of cards. An impassioned speech by Taragi, addressing the warlords not through rank but as a scion of House Kurita, placed the mustered soldiery firmly behind the Coordinator. With the aid of loyalist ISF members, they moved to crush Rowena's faction. Commando teams struck immediately at PRE holdings, inadvertently destroying the irreplaceable knowledge contained within their libraries on Ashio. The Shadow War was brought to a swift end in 2866, and the People's Reconstruction effort was dismantled. The internal security force had suffered greatly. The official number of casualties is only 1,500, Malcolm Katsuyori among them, but this is widely regarded to be a gross underestimate. Miyogi's decision to leave them as a subservient branch of the military after regaining power led to lingering distrust between the three parties. their new director Jacob Yokohama withdrew the remnants of the organization to their headquarters on New Samarkand, the Black Dojo. All future interaction between the head of state and ISF would take place through a mediator from the respected Sunzang MechWarrior Academy. Rowena Kurita managed to keep her head after the conflict was brought to a conclusion. Though the public was well aware of the breakdown in the relationship between the two siblings, for the sake of appearances, she did not face any serious repercussions beyond house arrest. The Draconis Combine was now faced with the question of what to do next. They had been humiliated before the eyes of the Inner Sphere and infiltrated by hostile realms. Furthermore, many planets from within the Razelhague military district, former Lyran holdings, were freely trading with the Commonwealth across their border. A prolonged peace might see them push for independence. Kurita decided to act before their enemies could take advantage. Despite Archon Elizabeth Steiner's failure to return from the New Earth Conference with an agreed ceasefire, her government was still applying pressure on her to stand down the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces. In 2865, Captain General Philippa Marik's son James visited the Triad on Tharkad, hoping to firm up relations between Steiner's realm and the Free World League. Renewed pressure from the Estates General in the wake of these talks forced Elizabeth to recall much of the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces to their peacetime stations, or risk being branded a warmonger. While 2 years had passed without any notable actions, she was not so naive to believe that the succession wars had ended. To ensure her realm was protected, she hired several notable mercenary units: Bad Dream, Blackhearts, Gravewalkers, and Narhol's Raiders. Unfortunately for the Commonwealth, they were ill prepared for the scale of the attack House Kurita had planned for them. In March of 2866, the first moves came along the Periphery border. These raids were only supposed to draw reinforcements forward, but unexpectedly light resistance led the DCMS commanders to claim the systems outright. These were followed up by a much larger effort against the heavily industrialized worlds of the Federation of Sky, which seized 5 more and laid waste to facilities on 4 others before word of the attack even made it back to the capital. Faced with an urgent need for more manpower, Elizabeth enacted the unpopular Military Disaster Act, which reintroduced widespread conscription within the Lyran Commonwealth. Just 30 months had passed since the final battle of the Second Succession War, but these actions now marked the commencement of the Third. In their wildest nightmares, no one could have imagined that it would continue for another 150 years. And that concludes our first chapter in the history of the Third Succession War. It was a little bit of a shorter one. That's going to be a theme for the next half a dozen episodes or so. And then towards the end of the series, you'll see them get quite a bit longer. Now this project is going to be divided up a little bit differently. The Shadow War is really the only significant thing to take place between the Second and Third Succession War. So this episode is heavily focused on the Draconis Combine, as you've just seen. Now in the past 2 conflicts, I've tried to tell the story of each nation more or less simultaneously. If I was to try and do that same kind of narrative, I'd just be jumping around so much for like one sentence here and then traveling across the Inner Sphere for another sentence there, and then suddenly I'd spend 10 minutes just focused in one specific area, and it would seem kind of arbitrary. The reality is, that's just what we know from the source books. They focus on the key interesting points, and they don't bother making mention of the hundreds of raids that are going on everywhere, because very little of significance is achieved by that. So to try and make this into a more compelling story for the videos, what you're going to see in the Third Succession War is that each episode is going to focus on a specific state or a specific border between 2 of them. So next time, we're going to look at how the Federated Sons responded to events unfolding the Shadow War and Kurita's decision to attack the Lyran Commonwealth, as they suspected they might. And that chapter is going to cover about 25 years of history, so that's almost the full duration of the prior two conflicts. But it will only focus on that right-hand side of the Inner Sphere. What happens in the Capellan Confederation, the Freewells League, and the Lyran Commonwealth, we're going to leave for another chapter down the line. I'm going to try and start each episode with some kind of visual to help you place yourself in the story, because in all likelihood we'll be jumping back 20 or so years each time we begin a new chapter. I've got an idea of how I might work it, but I guess you'll see. I believe this is going to be the best way to do it. I'm toying with the idea of doing a kind of partial summary halfway through the Third Succession War, or maybe 150 years into it, to kind of bring all those narrative threads back together in time for the 31st century, where the story of the BattleTech universe really gets going. It's kind of crazy to believe that all these hours of content we've done is all just prehistory, we haven't got to the modern era yet. Anyway, that's the plan for now. This outro is at risk of getting as long as the episode itself if I keep going any longer, so thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope you're looking forward to the next installment. If you did enjoy the video, you can help support me make them by giving this video a like or leaving a comment below. Both of those help YouTube promote the video to other people who might be interested in it. I do try to respond to as many comments as I can. If you have any friends that you think might enjoy it as well, or if you're part of any communities that you think have an interest in this sort of thing, sharing it around also is tremendously helpful. Lastly, if you want to support me a bit more directly and you'd like early access to the next chapter, you can check out my Patreon. It's linked in the description below. That's entirely optional. All my content is still going to continue to come out for free on YouTube eventually. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll hope to see you soon for another video.